A long time ago, two races lived on the earth, monsters and humans. One day, a war was started by the humans against the monsters. After the long battles, monsters suffered heavily from the amount of losses they endured. The monsters that had survived sealed themselves underground with a magic spell. Many years later, on Mount Ebot 1980X, warnings say that no one should climb that mountain, because whoever does will never return. Haha, Yoi, you got me! There is a talking plush doll. I'm Tim the plush doll. It's nice to meet a human like you, but I surely doubt your decision for coming down here. In this world, it's oppress or be oppressed. Fellswap Gold. Created by Tumblr user Jotman, Fellswap Gold is among one of the most popular alternate universes in Undertale, but how it came to be is a little less cut and dry than it just being another Swapfell AU. So to anyone who's watched my Swapfell video, the section on Fellswap Gold, yeah, forget everything I said there. Toss it out of your mind. I'll admit, that section was not as well researched as it should have been. A lot of the facts there are just wrong, mostly because a lot of the information that I needed had been deleted from the original Tumblr account, which is why I'll be fixing that here. Thank God for the return of the Internet Archive. Okay, so I did my absolute best to be as thorough as possible with research into this AU this time, since I want to give it the appreciation it deserves. Now, let's get into it. First, a very basic introduction to this AU. What is Fellswap Gold? Fellswap Gold is an Undertale alternate universe, or AU for short, based on the merging of two other Undertale AUs, Underfell and Underswap. Or more specifically, it's an AU loosely based on Swapfell Red, which we'll be explaining more later. Aside from being an Underfell Underswap fusion, it's also meant to be set in the 20th century, taking inspiration from the George Orwell novel 1984, as well as a little from the 1920s era of the Soviet Union, and a few other dark histories of other third world countries. Instead of simply making the monsters rude or mean like a typical Fell AU, the creator decided to make this AU focus on the theme of oppression, where the monsters themselves are their own oppressors. With the monsters in this world not being able to express anything related to the LGBTQA+, having to suppress their true feelings or risk being jailed for speaking their own ideals. They had even gone as far as to have sealed themselves underground when they were losing during the human-monster war and being too afraid to go back outside. Now, lately I've had a small fixation on the Cold War, or rather the effects of it on the citizens who were forced to just live through the consequences of the decisions their governments would make. So while I had been intrigued by this alternate universe before, I was especially curious to look into it now, and boy did I find more than I imagined when I dug a little further under the red, black, and golden surface. Oh, and before we begin, I just want to say that the creator for this AU at Blackgum, Jotland, Jot for short, made a post in 2020 saying that they identified as gender fluid, and their Twitter says that they use they/them pronouns, so just a heads up to anyone that that's their identity and we will respect it. They are also Chinese, so some of the English translations might be a little off, but props to them for having a second language at all. To begin, I honestly didn't know where to even start. See, the beginning of Fellswap Gold wasn't quite as clear-cut as a post popping up one day that said, "Oh, I want to make a new Swapfell AU." In fact, the line between Fellswap Gold and it being another Swapfell Red was really blurry at first. So, hear me out. I want to hesitantly say that the first post where Jot had made content related to this AU was for a very passionate post posted on March 27th, 2017, involving the different versions of Papyrus. They were a very avid Papyrus fan, by the way. The post included the OG Papyrus, Underfell Papyrus, Underswap Papyrus, Swapfell Papyrus, and Fellswap Papyrus? Yep, Fellswap Papyrus. Now, that might look an awful lot like the Swapfell Red Papyrus, and well, it was. Jot explained in an ask posted on March 29th that they preferred to call this red version of the Skeleton Brothers Fellswap, to differentiate them from the popular Swapfell AU created by K-Hopbang. They said that was just their own version of differentiating them though. They felt saddened that the Red Skeleton Brothers didn't seem to have an AU of their own. So Jot decided to roll up their sleeves and draw the other character designs that would be in this Fellswap AU themselves, and posted the design on April 1st, 2017. The art featured K-Hopbang's Swapfell purple designs on one side, and Jot's new design of this theoretical Fellswap, including the Swapfell Red Brothers, on the other side. With it was a note saying clearly that the Swapfell design belonged to K-Hopbang, while the left side's Fellswap Skeleton Bros belonged to their respective creator, and that the other character designs were made for fun and to help separate the Red Skeleton Brothers from Swapfell Purple. Now, you might remember in my last video, I had said that Redesign was the original creator for this specific popular version of the Skeleton Brothers and the Swapfell Red AU. Their first post about them being uploaded on May 8th, 2016. Now, the thing I somehow hadn't realized when making the Swapfell video was the gap between the initial first couple of pictures of their Swapfell skeletons and their posts introducing the official Swapfell Red AU have an almost 2-year gap between them. Hell, even the other Swapfell Red that existed at the time belonging to YB Miyuki, that was created on November 9th, 2016, also didn't have dedicated designs for the other characters, instead either using KH's Swapfell Purple designs, or eventually even using the designs that Jot themselves had created. So at that point in time, the Swapfell Red Brothers really didn't have an official universe to be a part of. So it isn't any wonder Jot made it themselves. And slight timeline jump, but on May 8th, they expressed, and to paraphrase their words, Undertale AUs shouldn't just be about Fawncest, since the Swapfell Red Brothers were heavily used for Fawncest-related fan content at the time. They wanted to make the other characters because they loved the Red Skeleton Brothers, and the fact that they didn't have their own story or world of their own made Jot sad. In their words, you can't just let every other character be a background for the bros or even not exist. Jot had just wanted to make a world for them because of their love for the Skeleton Brothers. I can't help but respect them heavily for that. This might be a little biased, but I always found it a little sad when AUs only focused on Sans and Papyrus or even just Sans, even though I love the both of them. Sometimes not even having the other Undertale characters in the AU at all. So the fact that Jot decided to act on this love for the skeletons to make a whole world for them makes me feel a little more appreciation for them as an Undertale AU creator. So Fellswap Gold began as a technical Swapfell Red AU. Technically. At this point it was simply just Fellswap. They made posts explaining how they wished for their new designs to be categorized versus how they hoped people would categorize the Swapfell Red Brothers and K-Asia Swapfell in terms of tagging and AU names. So, how did we get from this Fellswap using the Swapfell Red Brothers to the Fellswap Gold that we know today? Well, throughout the year of 2017, Jot continued using the Swapfell Red Brothers for this AU as they built more and more onto it. On May 12 is when I believe they created the Fellswap Gold Tumblr account. However, the first posts posted onto it on May 12th hadn't used the Fellswap Gold name yet and still just stuck with using Fellswap. A lot of the older art only stuck with Fellswap without adding on the gold differentiator, so I can only assume that even as they made content for this AU, it was still just Fellswap. An expansion for the Red Skeleton Brothers world that was being slowly turned into its own official AU. It was when 2018 came that a big change would occur for this AU. Our first sign of it was on a tweet made on Jot's Twitter on January 17th that gave us the earliest peek at the new Sans design that I could find at least. It featured Chara, Temmie, and this new Sans design. Another interesting thing to note is that 6 days prior to this post, Ziz9, Swapfell Red's creator, returned to their Tumblr account after an almost 2-year hiatus, and posted artwork of several papyri, and included in the caption was, "My Swapfell is not Fellswap. Don't call it Fellswap." Back to Jot, on January 19th, they posted on their Tumblr artwork of several Sanses, including this new Sans, and they had used Fellswap Gold when saying which AU he's from, not just Fellswap. And it included, "Yes, I changed his outfit. I'll put the details in the Fellswap Gold blog later." On April 4th, 2018, Jot unveiled the official redesigns for Sans and Papyrus for Fellswap Gold. Also on February 4th, Ziz9 had made a post speaking about their own frustration of their skeleton designs being called Fellswap. Though the text in the post says August 2017, and the bottom of the post says they shared this frustration with the Korean fandom, which they had in fact done so on their Twitter in Korean on August 3rd and August 6th, 2017. First explaining why they won't be calling Swapfell Red Fellswap, then re-explaining their views due to a DM they received that was upset at their previous tweet. It's a long read and you'd have to Google Translate it unless you can understand Korean, but in short, it's just proof that this was an issue Ziz9 had been having for months before 2018. In any case, they explained that Fellswap was Jot's AU, and that Ziz9's work wasn't Fellswap, and it was for their own Swapfell Red AU. And they also began posting the first art of their official Swapfell Red AU designs from January 3rd, 2018 on their Twitter. Returning to Jot, they posted their own post clearing up the situation between them and Ziz9 on February 5th, a day after Ziz9's post on this was posted on Tumblr. They explained that they never claimed to have made the Swapfell Red Brothers since their designs existed before Jot ever drew them themselves, and asks that no one attacks Ziz9 over this issue. They explain that the groups Sis9 is a part of are centered around fun cess, adult and NSF content, and since they knew their Fellswap Gold AU has minors following it, they didn't want the skeleton designs for their AU to be connected to those kind of crowds as heavily as the Swapfell redesigns had been. So, the main reason they made the new Fellswap Gold Sands and Papyrus was to avoid them being sexualized in that manner. And they were never forced to change designs by anyone. They also say that they mean no disrespect to people who are in those groups and want people to enjoy the content that they want to be a part of. And they feel awful that they can't make everyone happy. On February 7th, Jot posts a now very commonly used image showing the different Swapfell designs and AUs they belong to, making it clear that the Swapfell red skeletons were now separate from their Fellswap Gold AU completely, and explained that they and Sis9 had talked the misunderstandings over and asked that no one be mad at them or Sis9 anymore, and that the fandom returns to being peaceful. So there we have it. The reason why the old version of the skeletons for Fellswap Gold looked like Swapfell Reds was because it was Swapfell Red's skeleton designs. The reason why it was changed was not just to respect Sis9's Swapfell Red AU, but to also not have their AU being entangled in adult content as heavily as those specific skeletons were. Also, months later on September 26, 2018, they announced that they'd be deleting any artwork they made that connected the Swapfell Red brothers to the Fellswap Gold universe, as well as announcing that they will not be drawing the Swapfell Red brothers anymore. So while you might still spot some old art of the Swapfell Red brothers on their account, any art that implied them to be connected to Fellswap Gold has been deleted completely from their account. Whew boy. So much to say, and I haven't even gotten to talking about the Fellswap Gold AU itself quite yet. But I just wanted to make that history clear, since I'm sure lots of people wondered why there was a design change in the first place, me included. Now we can finally move on to actually talking about Fellswap Gold, and we'll start with the character sheets. You can skip this section to over here if you'd rather not have to sit through me reading through them all. First we have you, Chara, who has been swapped with Frisk as the protagonist. You got a school bag for your items. You got a paper knife and some gross bandages. You are not here for happy reasons. Monster Kid, who was swapped with Azrael, and Human Kid, who is Frisk, who was swapped with Chara, both of them taking the place as original Toriel and Asgore's children. They were orphans that were adopted by the king and queen, but something had happened to them. Tem or Temmie, who swapped with Flowey as your best friend. Like Undertale Flowey, this Tem wants to help you, so sticks by your side, made obvious by the fact that it takes up a spot in your inventory. Asgo, who had swapped with Toriel as caretaker of the ruins. He went insane, and has a hard time telling his illusions from reality. He makes pies filled with monster dust. He says that you look just like one of my children, and insists on keeping you in the ruins. He talks to an imaginary friend behind the gate, but despite all that, he's not a bad goat papa. For now, we'll skip over Sands and Papyrus and come back to them in just a moment. So the next main monster is Undyne, who swapped with Alphys. She's the top royal scientist. She obsesses over reforming weak monsters into half cyborgs and completely ignores their true wants. She's crazy for superhero comics, and her favorite hero is Cat Meow. She can play the theremin. She pushes away others even when she needs the help. Alphys, who swapped with Undyne, is the lieutenant of the Royal Guard, and the only one who works hard in it. She has uncontrollable strength and breaks things accidentally. She looks chilly on the outside, but she's emotional on the inside. She performs tasks mechanically and wears a mask because she's shy. She can play the electric guitar. Napstertan/Napsterbluk, who swapped with Metatan as the ghost inhabiting a robot. They were built to unify the citizens, but isn't very helpful with that. They specialize in jazz electro music, or electro swing/glitch swing. Prideful on the outside, but has an inferiority complex on the inside. The things they can do depends on network voting. They took something that doesn't belong to them. Hapstabluk/Metatan, who's now the ghost. Misanthropic, or in other words, dislikes people and unsociable, and a cynic, but otherwise isn't a bad ghost. He enjoys classical sonata and plays lava, which I'm not quite sure what that means. Manages a mini outdoor theater, but the only person who visits is some slim tall guy. He can play the accordion and he has a Cockney accent, which is the accent spoken by some East Londoners. He's waiting for someone to come home even though that person had abandoned him. Toriel, who swapped with Asgo as the ruler of the underground. She has the underground follow despotic, or in other words, tyrannical rules and dictatorships. She's too tired to even hear the voices of her own people, or even her sons. She is blind and may be dying inside. Azriel, who swapped with the monster kid. He's the monster kid you meet at Snowdin now, and he's spoiled and pubertal. Or he could even be called an antisocial psychopath. A little shit that's never met his father before. And in the end, he'll be the biggest problem you'll face. Grilby, who swapped with Muffet. He's an arms dealer in Jotland. He still doesn't talk much, but it's advised that you can give him a donut from Muffet's. Muffet, who swapped with Grilby. She runs a buffet in Snowdin and sells fast food and cans. Her donuts are handmade and precious, and cost 9,999 G for one. Finally, of the main cast, we have Flowey, who swapped with Temmie as the silly little shopkeeper and species of the underground. A species with a shrewd business that sells special items. There had been plans to release character sheets for Burger Pants, Nice Cream Guy, Catty, Bratty, Royal Guard 01 and 02, as well as scenes for Jotland like the NTT Skyscraper and Grilby's Bar, but well, I don't think we're going to be getting those anytime soon. Something I've noticed is how everyone points out the change with Sands of Papyrus, but they weren't the only characters who went through a design change. Gaster had underwent a design change as well, and he had been changed to be a woman with she/her pronouns. The original Gaster sheet was pretty empty anyway, only stating that he was the last lead of the Royal Scientist team, and a certain message written in wingdings. So we'll be switching to reading off the new Gaster sheet. She was still the previous lead of the Royal Scientist team. She's mute and the woman who speaks in hands. Paler, paler yet paler, as opposed to darker, darker yet darker. Aside from the same wingdings message, which we'll decipher soon enough, we also learn that all her followers in this AU are female. Finally, we have the Skeleton Brothers. The reason I left them for last was, well, I did want to compare the old ideas Jot had for them with the new version of them, beginning with the original Swapfell Red version of Sans. Sans, who replaced Papyrus as the Optimist, is the leader of the Royal Guard. He's trying hard to revitalize the decaying Royal Guard and calls himself the Fabulous Sans. His pasta of choice is farfalle and is actually good at cooking it. And he has slight gender identity issues. Now let's read off the new Sans sheet. The elder brother and leader of the Royal Guard, he's old and tired. He has no vision in his left eye, which only shows the star symbol while attacking. A politico, meaning either a politician or someone with strong political views, who has great relationship with family, the queen, and his subordinates. He's secretly interested in dressmaking. He would be very gentle to a friend, but extremely brutal to an enemy. And noted by the farfalle on the side, that is still his pasta of choice, as well as the fact that he enjoys wine since it's been paired with the farfalle. Now on to Papyrus, who swapped with Sans as the judge. The Swapfell red version first. He has mild autism and social phobia, but still tries hard. He sells black bread, which could be the Russian variety since his AU is slightly based on the Soviet Union. Drinks whipped cream from the can and plays the drums. He tells teeth-related puns unintentionally. The new Papyrus character sheet reads, "The younger brother that gets overprotected by his brother has braces on his canine teeth. He has mild autism and communicates with note-taking and barely talks. The words on his hoodie change with his mood. He is very good at Famicom television games and is a fan of angsty superhero comics. You never want your name to be on his blacklist." Let's go back over to the Fellswap Gold post giving us extra details about the AU. Most of this I went over in the intro, but the thing I want to draw attention to is the fact that this AU's details were mostly based on the novel 1984. So let's talk about that novel for a sec. Or well, a little longer than a sec. When I decided to make this video, I immediately knew that I had to look into 1984 myself. And I'll be honest with you, I could barely make it past page 100. Not because it's a bad book, but far from that. I heavily recommend reading it actually. While I was reading it, it definitely shed some light on some uncomfortable truths that Mr. Orwell had managed to predict in the novel that are happening today, and it honestly gave me this heavy feeling of claustrophobia with how helplessly trapped in the system the citizens were, so that was kind of the main reason why I had to put it down. Oh, by the way, fun fact, the author also wrote Animal Farm, so if you read that novel and enjoyed it, I'm recommending reading 1984 even heavier now. Well, I'll focus on the parts that I think are most important to Fellswap Gold specifically. Very basically, the setting is in London in an imagined future where another world war had been ongoing for decades between the three superstates of the world. London is under the control of a political party simply named the Party. Its leader is simply referred to as Big Brother, and they follow the ideology of Ingsoc, the shortened form of English socialism. Though, note, Fellswap Gold is explicitly said to be under the communist economic system. No, just saying. Over the course of a few decades, the party had completely reformed London in the worst way possible. There's 24-hour surveillance from the streets to inside people's homes through television screens called telescreens that not only play anything they want the citizens to see and you cannot turn it off, but have cameras and microphones installed into them that are always recording you. They constantly rewrite events in the past to match the ideas and things they said that they want the people to believe, and even put forward a new version of English, calling the original English Old Speak, while this new English is Newspeak, that not only simplifies grammar, but limits vocabulary to make it easier to control the language of the people, to limit the ability the citizens have to communicate anything that promotes self-identity, self-expression, and free will. You can't even think of anything that goes against the ideology of Ingsoc, which is known as a thought crime in Newspeak. Hell, you can't even have the slightest facial expression, even hint that you committed a thought crime, which is a face crime. In summary, this world is one where the political party has complete control and power over those under them, and the citizens have absolutely no power or control in this situation but to comply with those absurd not laws, since technically they say laws don't exist, but if you do something against the ideology of INSOG, you'll either be sentenced to death or sent to a labor camp, or, oops, my bad, a joy camp, as they say in Newspeak. There are many instances where the party wants or forces their citizens to believe two conflicting beliefs at the same time, which in Newspeak is referred to as doublethink. Example of this is one of the slogans of INSOC, which says, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength," which, if you notice, is very similar to a certain part of the Fellswap Gold cover page that reads, "Pacifist is genocide, mercy is fight, love is hate." Notably, the text there was different pre-skeleton redesign, with the blog reading, "Donate your dust." But I think the change has a deeper impact to it. The new text implies that Fellswap Gold's underground follows many of the heavily oppressive ideals that are to be followed in 1984, simply stating that these two contradictory terms are equal is a classic example of doublethink. There are many other references to 1984 seen in the posts of Fellswap Gold that we've been given so far. For example, that Gaster text in Wingdings? When translated it reads, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past," which is a quote from 1984 and one of the party slogans which I believe applies quite well to Gaster. If this Gaster is like the original Undertale, then pretty easy to control time when you're spread throughout it, right? As in 1984, altering the past to fit what they want is a regular occurrence. A direct quote reads, "If all records told the same tale, then the lie passed into history and became truth. And whatever was true now was true from everlasting to everlasting." They even have a term for erasing someone completely from history, to unperson them, to erase all records of a person and forbid anyone from talking about them ever again. I'd like to imagine that this would have been touched on when it came to what happened to Gaster and her followers, but well, that's wishful thinking at this point. And speaking of Gaster, I want to talk about an art piece that I could only find on the Chinese wiki for this Undertale AU of a seemingly younger looking Papyrus, Sans, and Gaster, with the caption for the image being "Old Fellswap Skelly Things," which yeah, old cause they're all the old designs for these three characters. Something about the fact that Papyrus is dressed in a straitjacket-like coat with shackles, with Gaster holding onto him in a way that looks like he's trying to keep him close and controlled, while Sans is dressed more casually and held with much more care by Gaster, just rubs me the wrong way. In one of Jot's deleted comics featuring children version of Sans and Papyrus, Jot says they headcanon Papyrus to be the big brother for the Swapfell Red AU, despite Sans being the one to take care of him. Well, this does get changed with the new designs, but since this is the old version of them and assuming Papyrus is the older brother here, I had a bit of a dark thought of what exactly this image meant. See, in the more details about Fellswap post, Jot does say that monsters could be imprisoned for speaking their ideas, and in 1984, while you could be sent to labor camps, there was also a chance you get sent to the Ministry of Love, which basically enforces that the laws are followed, and if someone doesn't, they get sent there and very forcibly get corrected. So basically imprisoned and tortured until they decide to cooperate. While I have no idea if the head of the Royal Scientist team would be involved directly with something like that, I'd imagined that they would be pretty loyal to the Queen, so there could have been a possibility that Papyrus could have said something that went against the laws, So Gasta could have brought in there himself to be corrected. I don't want to imagine that was a possibility, but well, it is just a possible explanation for it. And as I'll explain later on, children in 1984 were especially indoctrinated in the ideology of INSOC. So while Sans might have been less than happy at the thought, it could be possible that he either wasn't completely against or had no choice but to simply have his brother get taken away and corrected in a manner that he might have believed was correct, since it's the way the law, which he is shown to look up to highly, operates. If the fact that he became the royal guard leader and wants glory to return to the royal guard says anything about his opinion on the higher-ups in this AU. Okay, that was a little darker than I would have liked. Back to actual content that's still in the AU that hasn't been deleted. The Echo Flower is a reference to the telescreens in the novel as well. In the AU, they're used to monitor the citizens, record everything, and repeatedly play the last thing that's sent out through it. In the background of the image, the silhouette of Paris is seen listening into an earpiece that's connected to an echo flower. So perhaps he could have been meant to represent the thought police that are in the 1984 novel, the people in charge of watching over the surveillance and punishing anyone caught breaking any laws, which is why it said you wouldn't want to end up on his blacklist. This idea feels even more plausible when Jot uploaded an image of Papyrus looking straight at you in a manner similar to how Big Brother would through the telescreens, holding his blacklist with the caption, "Is being watched," being put up in big red bold letters behind him, similar to the words of Big Brother is watching you in the novel. I think that was even more implied when in the story trailer image, his hoodie straight up says Watchman. And even in that image I mentioned before, it says Watchman. And the trees around him are covered in the imagery of eyes inside the bark. Like you can't escape the surveillance even out in the deep woods of Snowden. That same watchful eye pattern shown in a different artwork with Papyrus watching Chara walk through the forest. Yet another correlation I want to point out is the speech bubble by the politics bear that reads, even if we've been snowed in here for years, the Queen still says that we are in a war. This could be a case like Asgore in the original, where it says he declared war on the humans despite all the monsters still being trapped underground. But something in me thinks that wasn't the thought train Jot was going on when they put that in. How can you be at war with someone when they're trapped underground with only other monsters around them? This to me feels like an example of black-white, where if someone in power says something, then you better believe that something is true, even if nothing else points to it being true. They say the sky is red, it's red. They say 2 + 2 = 5, well, it's 5 now. They say you're at war despite having the enemy on the other side of the barrier that you put up to keep them out. Well, you're still in a war, them's the breaks. Another thing I want to connect to 1984 is actually Azrael. There were quite a few passages in the book related to the children in the novel. Basically, they're all awful, but not of their own fault. Having been raised under this ideology of INSOC, they end up being the strongest advocators for it. They copied the groups of the party in control of them. They adored the party and praised the mysterious Big Brother. They became so indoctrinated in this that they even turned to their own families and turned them in for committing thought crimes. And they get praised for doing so. When I read those sections about how the children in this novel were turning out, I couldn't help but wonder if that's the route Azrael was supposed to go down as well. Even the initial first art Jot had made for Fellswap, Azil is shown to have his hand on his chest in a manner that I can only see as full of patriotic pride. The only thing we know about him is that he's living in the shadow of the two orphan children the Queen and King used to have, and that the Queen pays very little attention to him, and that he and Chara would have had a future altercation and he would have been the possible final boss, with it being his hand holding that one dagger surrounded by the 6 souls in the catalog image, then seeing him holding that same dagger and a locket while obviously upset, and Jot straight up saying that he's gonna be your biggest problem in the end. Another thing I'd like to point out is this small image of who I'm assuming is an ice cream guy in burger pants offering what looks like DVDs and books. In 1984, the heavy censoring and management of what media the public were exposed to was something that had its own dedicated ministry, so I'd imagine Fellswap Gold had planned to have the same level of restrictions on what the public could and couldn't see to keep them in check better. One thing I'm stumped on is what the key Sans is holding is meant to represent. Like, I'm already working my 2 brain cells overtime making this video and I'm trying to sound smart, so I'm just wondering what it's supposed to be for. Is there a connection to it and the locket Ezreal has? Is it some key of power symbol? The muted symbols over the mouths of all the Protoswing citizens and Elfies in the image practically scream, your opinion doesn't matter if it's not in compliance with what the Queen wants, so it's as good as not saying anything at all. It seems that Fellswap Gold is a lot more lenient in terms of protests in comparison to 1984, since it seems they're allowed but not taken seriously, and if they get too serious, then they're taken care of. Now I want to talk about something that isn't related to 1984, but instead the other inspiration for this AU, the 20s Soviet Union, particularly in relation to Sans and the star in his eye. The red star is associated with communism, and was said to be associated with many different things, from the 5 fingers of the worker's hand to symbolizing the Red Army themselves. However, Sans' star is notably upside down in his new and old design. While there's the OMG devil symbol meaning, there seems to be countless symbolic reasons for an upside down star that I could find, so I'm curious what you think it means. I'm not exactly the biggest history buff, so anyone more knowledgeable about this, please tell me what you think. I'm going to take a slight detour from all the seriousness to talk about another inspiration that Jot hadn't mentioned. In connection to Undyne, she's obsessed with turning monsters into half cyborgs, and it's shown that many monsters had been gifted with some mechanical upgrades. One thing I noticed while researching for this video was that Jot was a pretty adamant Transformers fan. They even made Transformers designs for Undertale, Underfell, and Underswap Sands of Papyrus. I'd like to imagine that this was a little nod towards that, using their frankly amazing robot drawing skills and incorporating it into their AU, which, I mean, what's the point of making an AU if you don't put a little part of yourself into it? Which they did in more ways than just one, since they also mentioned that the premise of the AU, the idea of oppression and hiding your true self, was something that they had to suffer through as well. And one more thing I want to point out is this. If these look familiar, then you must have seen the painting called Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali. The meaning behind this art piece, to my knowledge, is though time passes on, as skewed and fluid as it may seem, memory persists. Jot uses these melting clocks with Papyrus, as well as a specific one of Gaster's followers. And they had made a post pointing out that this Gaster follower resembles an element of the painting. A possible reference to how OG Sans had perhaps some possible connection to Gaster and knowledge on timelines, so this swap to Papyrus does too? Before we finish this section, there's some art I want to go over that I haven't seen anywhere else until I went looking for it. These three artworks are actually three potential neutral route outcomes that this AU could have had. The first, which Jot actually has posted up on their Twitter still, is of Papyrus in a neutral run where you only spare Asgore. According to the caption, this is a grown-up version of Papyrus, since his age in the Fellswap Gold AU, in comparison to a human's, is about 15 to 20. With Sans gone, he ends up being the royal guard leader and working as an agent for the king. He's dressed in a royal guard outfit very similar to his brother's, and his dental support has been removed. In a comment, Jot adds that in the phone call, Papyrus says he knows that you'll come back, since he knows you're curious about the variety of endings you could receive, proving that Papyrus does have knowledge on timelines like OG Sans does. The other two artworks I could only find on the Chinese Undertale fandom wiki, and I'm just gonna lean on hopeful trust that this is accurate. The second art is of Undyne in an Undyne neutral route where you only spare her, and she becomes the ruler of the underground. It seems like her little obsession went out of control with the fact that you can only see the monster beside her as completely mechanical now. I think it might be Papyrus turned into a robot, judging by his height and the spiky mouth and the general shape of the body. The final of these is if you only spare Nepstatan, and they become leader of the underground. It seems like they end up fully merging with the surveillance system. Do they end up spreading their music or their own version of propaganda through the underground 24/7? My bet is on the music though. I think it's chilling how in all of these, the oppressive underground you went into remains the same. It seems besides some changes, the laws seem untouched, except for the fact the leader might make a few changes to make the kingdom fit their own personal desires. Like Undyne getting to go a little more cyborg crazy and Napstatan making everyone listen to them through the echo flowers. Of course, with all these neutral endings seeming so bleak, a pacifist run really does seem to be the only true best ending for this AU. On to other art that we've gotten that give us a peek into the actual story. Jot had made two little comic pictures of Sans and Chara. The first being the Sans and Chara comic from their Twitter, asking them to hand over the Timmy doll. Since we see Frisk carrying a Timmy doll as well, and the huge pile of them at the bottom of the hole in Mount Ebot, and the fact that Toriel has several in her character sheet picture, I imagine that when Frisk and Monster Kid were alive, the Queen and King had seen how much Frisk loved that doll, so decided to mass produce it so other children in the underground could feel that same joy. But when the mysterious thing happened to those children, all the dolls were forced to be recalled, then dumped far away from the capital, and to the furthest spot from the capital, which is that spot in the ruins. Or they could have been sent to Frisk's grave if they end up buried there like Chara had been in original Undertale. They probably forbid anyone from owning Timmy dolls, so Sans seeing Chara holding one, he obviously wanted them to hand it over. The second image has Sans and Chara talking about Papyrus. He tells them that they're lucky since Papyrus was talking to them at all. He explains that Papyrus is autistic and doesn't talk. He rarely even opens his mouth to talk to Sans. He tells them they must be someone special, and we stand the skeleton bros being caring with each other in this house. You know what? Let's have a complete washout of all this just dark energy. And how about we go over more content that's a lot more lighthearted? Some of it deleted, some of it I could only find digging through Jot's Twitter, others just stuff I want to talk about for funsies. Starting Starting with something small, the River Person never got a character sheet of their own, but they do get a full body artwork with the new Gaster design in a post-shot made of different versions of the River People and Gasters. Then there's this Alphys and Undyne comic. It's Undyne telling Alphys she's fine and it'll be okay to just be like this. Undyne in this AU does have trouble asking or accepting help from others, so I would have loved to see how this scene would have played out. Alphys wanting to help Undyne and Undyne learning to accept it so the relationship can develop into a deeper bond of trust would have been so sweet to see. Jot does say they were working on an Undyne backstory, and there was also an art piece of a younger looking Undyne from the Chinese wiki that seemed to have had her be bullied. So I imagine that's why she has a hard time trusting others. Next, ever wondered what Metaton's robot design would look like for this AU? And I mean, maybe you also wondered what Napstablook's ghost design looks like, but you know, we're mostly here for the Metaton robot design. Wonder no more, cause Jot had in fact uploaded a gorgeous artwork of it. While there had been some glimpses of it in other artworks, this was the first full body one we got. And while I don't know if we would have seen it in the actual story, I'm really happy Jot drew it out. They also made one for the robot Underfell Napstablook, and that one's still on their blog. I mean, just look at them. Speaking of, Jot is a major Papyrus Metaton shipper, and seemed to want to ship Napstaton with Swapfell Red version of Sans, as there's quite a few artworks of them interacting, with Sans even straight up asking Napstaton to date him. Which, I get it Sans, screw the anti-LGBT laws. If robot pretty, you gotta shoot your shot. At least it seems Papyrus Metaton possible ship stayed post-skeleton redesign. Oh, and here are a few changes that had to be done for the AU's main artwork after the redesigns to put the new skeletons in the old skeleton place. Oh, they couldn't replace the Sans and Papyrus in the promotional video, but they were replaced for the image version of it. And when it comes to Sans and Papyrus, there were a ton of content that was completely nuked. I hadn't seen most of these until I went searching for it through the Wayback Machine, so let's look into what the Swapfell Red Brothers would have been like in this AU, besides just the character sheet and little glimpses of them that we got. And well, most of the characteristics were kept in the redesign, so maybe they'll tell us a little bit about the new versions of them too. One of the first is a compilation of Undynes and Papyri across the alternate universes, including Fellswap Undyne with Swapfell Red Papyrus. Again, a little sad Jot completely deleted this post instead of just removing the outdated Fellswap image, since I think it's really cute. My only solace is that they plan to make Undyne and Papyrus still friends in their AU, even responding to an ask that said the new Papyrus would be Undyne's brace buddy, with a lot of excitement. And the two of them even share a passion for comics, so nerdy best friends. Oh, how I wish we could have seen more of the two of you. Then we have a couple of comics based on the Swapfell Red skeletons. The first is a cute comic of Swapfell Red and Underfell skeletons hanging out, presumably at an arcade. Underfell Papyrus and Swapfell Red Sans looking absolutely styling with the caption Lord and Boss, Lady Bro Forever above them, while Underfell Sans and Swapfell Papyrus are the designated bag carriers. The comic has Swapfell Papyrus wanting to interact with the typical arcade machines like a Dance Dance Revolution machine and a claw game, and despite trying to act all cool and aloof, the two stylish bros eventually give in and end up having fun with them, with Swapfell Papyrus encouraging them or helping them out, while Underfell Sans just has to deal with the shenanigans. The second features only the Swapfell Red Bros. It's a two-image comic where the first once more has Papyrus as the bag holder, while Sans is notably out of his normal outfit for this AU. Instead of a crop top and shorts with shredded bottom hems, he has on a really nice looking dress. He's also applying makeup while saying, "Can't you see I'm a real man?" To which Papyrus replies with a happy, "You are a manly skelly, I can tell." The second image is them in a cinema, where Sans is crying over whatever scene is being played on the screen, sadly ruining the mascara/lipstick he had on, saying a real man never cries. To which Papyrus holds out a tissue box for him and says, "Your makeup is melting, my lord." Now, while the original Sans character sheet said he had slight gender identity issues, I wonder if they meant he simply liked femininity and felt conflicted since it might have been discouraged underground for male monsters to present in any way similar to feminine, or if he identifies as trans femme or gender fluid or just something outside of just strictly male, since he does still call himself a man, or maybe he's still in the process of fully transitioning. The late bro caption is making me lean more on gender fluid, like a nod towards the creator, or non-binary. The newer Sans is simply said to enjoy dressmaking, which seems to be the only tie-in to what the original Sans was going through. But I like to headcanon that Fellswap Gold Sans also has that same gender identity issue that the OG Swapfell Red Sans has, but suppresses the thought more than Swapfell Red Sans has. Also, I absolutely adore the fact that the Skeleton Brothers are on good terms with each other, before and after the redesign. While most AUs make it canon that Sans and Papyrus still care for each other, even if in some cases like the Fell AUs, they find each other annoying, the fandom kinda seems to want to see them not get along. Some of the fandom at least, not all of y'all, just some of y'all. Anyway, seeing Papyrus encourage and want to see his younger brother happy, and then having Sans do the same for him when Papyrus is switched to the younger brother role of the redesign, makes me super happy. Oh, and there's this silly post about Sans and Toriel sucking at technology, hinting at the Queen's blindness being a temporary thing that would have healed over time. Maybe it's some kind of she's blind to the true needs and wants of her people, so her blindness reflects its symbolism, but I don't know. I think it would have been a little neat having some disability representation. Still a funny post though.
I know something you don't.
Well, moving on to some of the last artwork Jot made for this AU, some amazing designs for alternate summer and autumn clothes for Sans and Papyrus, and wait, did I just say some of the last artwork? Unfortunately, yes. After posting the summer outfits of the brothers, they went on a months-long hiatus. They posted the image of the neutral ending Papyrus, then another month later announced the deletion of anything connected to the Swapfell Red brothers being connected to their AU. They also explained why they went on the hiatus, but I think the reasons are a little too personal to talk about here. They posted one more post of the Fellswap Skeleton Bros in their autumn outfits, made another post explaining once more why they made the Fellswap Gold brothers, then their blog apparently disappeared. On the Wayback Machine, trying to enter the blog anywhere from about November 2018 to August 2019 just turns up nothing. Though they did post what I think is the last artwork connected to anything Fellswap Gold, being an artwork posted on March 13th, 2019, about the different Skeleton Brothers as Hollow Knight bugs. And, well, that's the last artwork we've gotten from them for this AU to date, to my knowledge. Their main blog luckily did return on August 19th, 2018, and they explained that they had been trying to get the blog back and finally managed to. However, they decided they didn't want to go back to drawing fandom content due to the stress of trying to recover the blog. Also, they graduated college and got a job. Yay! And then we got another long hiatus that lasted almost 2 years before they came back to the blog one more time to explain that they were just busy living their life now to upload anything. But they do answer some simple questions. They want people to know that people can use their art as profile images, they can continue making fan content for Fellswap Gold, they can make not safe for work content of the AUs as long as the character is an adult, and they also say they don't know if they'll upload anything in the future, but want people to enjoy the stuff that they've put up. And that's the last that we've heard from them. On Tumblr at least. Chara is still semi-active on Twitter, the last post being on August 19th of this year. It seems that they've just moved on from Undertale. Even if they have made posts about it, they seem to just be over their Undertale phase, for the most part, and are interested in other things now. And, well, that's just how life goes. I'm mostly just happy they weren't completely just wiped off the face of the earth and their blogs are still available to read. So while it looks like any new content for this AU seems less than likely, we can never know what the future holds. Though also I don't think anyone would, but please leave Jot be and not bug them about Fellswap Gold. Lots of us move on from interests all the time, and if they don't feel the urge to continue it, then there's nothing any of us can do. Just enjoy the content that they have given us already. Or you can support the art that they've made on their Twitter account. They're still an amazing artist. Even if this AU hasn't released a comic or official story, I was surprised at just how much there was you can learn about it just from a few things that hinted at a certain potential plot point or character potential moment. It was obvious a lot of care and love went into making and planning for this AU. And I hope this video conveys how much I want to show that same care and love right back to it. While it's popular, I wish there was more fan content for it. So, fan content creators, do your thing! Kidding. Well, maybe. I would be happy to see any content you have made for this AU though, so... Though, there are a few things I can't help but wonder about. What happened between Toriel and Asgore, and how did Asgore go insane? What did happen with Frisk and Monster Kid? Toriel probably lost her sight at some point before canon and wasn't born blind, so how did that happen? What would have been on all those other characters' character sheets? If Waterfall is a nuclear waste dump, how bad is the rest of the underground? What does the key that Sans holds do? Will we ever get to see the redesigned Sans rocking a dress too? Is what I would say if I hadn't found a goldmine of new information. I was about halfway through editing this video and posting on Blue Sky during a little break when a very nice user informed me that there was a Q&A from Jotland themselves giving more information about the AU that never made it outside the Chinese fandom circle, and even gave me a link to the Tumblr giving all the details of what they said. And boy was I excited reading through it all. All of it is written in Chinese, so I had to Google Translate, and the translations were worded a little wonkily, but after reading through it all, I was beating myself up for not having found it sooner to incorporate it into this video. So I will be making a part 2 to this video, talking about everything I found reading through that Q&A. I'll link the Tumblr below in case you want to read it yourself, but if you'd rather just listen to someone else read and explain it to you, then well, stick around for part 2, coming out hopefully next week. I'll be seeing you then. Take care.